Hi, now that we've watched our video on, the three main rhetorical devices, I wanted to go over and review the concepts, but not only the concepts, but also ways that we find these in texts, because we have to remember that texts come in various forms, right? Some of them are documentaries or podcasts or TED Talks, while, some are more the traditional essay, article, written sort of text that we typically think of. So some examples of logos will be statistics and numbers, factual evidence that is proven. So you want to make sure that it is actually factual, right? Sometimes people say ideas very confidently and it feels like a fact, but it isn't. So we want to make sure that we are careful and mindful about what we're considering as facts, right? Graphs and charts are other forms of data, right? And then historical dates and events. So often if you see any numbers in a text, it's going to be a form of logos. So examples of ethos would be, its credibility and morality, right? So we want to make sure that they're trustworthy. So sometimes we're given the background of an author and they are in fact an expert on the topic, right? While other times we are given the background of an author and it has no relevance to the topic that they are writing about. So then where is their ethos or credibility coming from, right? It's not from their background. So sometimes this is great knowledge, but we don't always get this. So using data or sources that help strengthen our arguments, right? So as students, we ourselves don't have a lot of ethos. We aren't really experts typically in a specific field at this point. So we end up using library databases and citing from experts, right? So using credible scholarly types of sources, right? So those authors that we were talking about that maybe don't have the relevant background are using potentially really strong sources. If they're not, then we have to question why we think that they are credible or not credible, right? So besides that, sometimes people will give us their personal lived experience, right? And sometimes their lived experience can be relevant as well. But we want to make sure that we're not associating anecdotal data as credibility, right? Because anecdotal data, which is like a narrative, right? So telling a story is often pathos. However, right, if you're writing about immigration, let's just say as an example, and your family are immigrants, like recent immigrants, and you know the process, right? Maybe including that could add a little bit of ethos, but you wouldn't want to rely too heavily on just your lived experience. You would want to also bring in other examples to strengthen that argument and that ethos, right? So yeah, as I said, right, be careful with anecdotes and narratives because they are typically a little bit more pathos. So our last one is pathos, which is emotion, right? So often we convey emotions through anecdotes or narratives. They operate in a way that creates a sense of empathy, often in viewers or readers. They often can empathize with a singular event where someone's telling their life story, right? We're able to humanize them. Music and sounds. If we're watching a documentary, really think about the music and the sound they incorporate, right? And how does that make us feel? Think about those suspense movies before, someone jumps out at you. How is the music, right? They're trying to get you to feel something, and they're convincing you through that, emotion. Besides that, images, right? So if an article includes images, wondering why they're choosing these images, how are they affecting the reader, similarly to documentaries, right? Or short videos or anything of that nature. Why are they including these images? How is it making you feel? How is it making you react? Does it make you want to do something more? And we can kind of think of, those little sad puppy commercials, right? Where they have the song In the Arms of the Angel come on, right? And you just want to adopt all the puppies and get, donate all the money. That would be a super strong form of pathos, right? And then finally, in our text, it's word choice. So pay attention to powerful language, okay? So our quick overview, logos is logic, facts, data, right? Ethos, credibility, authenticity, morality, and pathos is emotions and